Remember when Saturday night meant piling into the car and heading to that one restaurant where the waitress knew your order before you sat down? Where the smell of frying onions hit you the moment you opened the door, and the menu hadn't changed in 20 years because it didn't need to? If you grew up in Canada in the 60s and 70s, you ate at restaurants that weren't just places to get food, they were landmarks, gathering spots, and part of your family's routine. Hit that subscribe button now because number 3 on this list is going to hurt. It was the one restaurant every Canadian loved, and losing it felt like losing a piece of home. Starting at 12, Scott's Chicken Villa was the Ontario institution that made fried chicken a family affair from the 1960s through the 1980s. Long before KFC dominated, Scott's was where Ontario families went for crispy, golden chicken that actually tasted homemade. The restaurants were scattered across southern Ontario, each one a local landmark, with that distinctive red and white sign. The chicken was pressure-fried to perfection, served with fresh-cut chips, coleslaw with the perfect vinegar tang, and dinner rolls still warm when they hit your table. At 11, Fran's Restaurant was the 24-hour Toronto institution that fed night owls, shift workers, and late-night revelers from 1940 to 2018. Fran's wasn't fancy, it was a diner with vinyl booths, Formica counters, and a menu that offered everything from breakfast to burgers. But what made Fran's special was that it never closed. After the bars shut, after concerts let out, after night shifts ended, people descended on Fran's. The banana splits were legendary, massive constructions that required commitment to finish, especially at 3 a.m. Number 10, Mother's Pizza Parlor and Spaghetti House turned pizza night into an experience from the 1970s through the 1990s. Hamilton, 1970, Gray Sison and his partners opened a pizza joint that felt like your friend's finished basement. If your friend had stained glass lamps, deep vinyl booths, and frosty mugs big enough to dunk your fist in. The vibe was half Italian bistro, half family rec room. Birthday dinners unfolded over shared pitchers, minor hockey teams celebrated wins with towers of garlic bread, and those frosty mugs of root beer made every meal feel like a celebration. At 9, Licks Homeburgers and Ice Cream proved burgers could be both premium and fun from the 1980s through the 2010s. Toronto, 1980. Queen Street East. Denise Meehan opened a burger joint where the staff didn't just cook. They sang, loudly, with enthusiasm bordering on alarming. Licks wasn't trying to be McDonald's, it was the opposite, loud, weird, premium fun. The home burgers were thick and hand-smashed, the chips were hand-cut, and that famous Licks sauce that people tried to replicate at home but never quite got right. Mr. Green Jeans. Number 8, Mr. Green Jeans. And if you grew up in Toronto in the 80s or 90s, this one hits hard. Opened in 1980 right inside the Eaton Center, Green Jeans was the ultimate mall-era family spot. Nachos served on hubcaps, sundaes so tall they needed architectural support, and a menu designed to make kids scream with joy. For 3 decades, Green Jeans was the reward at the end of a shopping trip. Those hubcap nachos became legendary, and the sundaes came with sparklers if it was your birthday. At 7, Ed's Warehouse represented old-school Toronto dining at its finest from 1966 to 2000. Ed Mervish understood that dinner and a show needed the dinner part to work. In 1966, he opened Ed's Warehouse on King Street, serving one thing beautifully, roast beef. Heaping plates with mashed potatoes, peas, and Yorkshire pudding. The room was packed with antiques and chandeliers, creating a museum-like environment where you could eat. The roast beef was carved tableside, thick slices piled onto your plate, and it was comfort food elevated to an art form. Number 6, Tucker's Marketplace, which started as Mother Tucker's Food Experience in 1976 and evolved into the buffet empire that defined family dining. February 1976, the Prairies. Mother Tucker's opened with rustic chic and prime rib. Then the 80s hit, and Canadians wanted buffets. Tucker's Marketplace exploded with multiple stations, massive salad bars, carving stations with prime rib and turkey, and dessert bars that made kids lose their minds. Weekend brunches were legendary. Families would arrive when doors opened and spend 2 hours grazing through breakfast foods, lunch items, and that chocolate fountain. At 5, Swiss Chalet still exists, but the Swiss Chalet of the 60s, 70s, and 80s was a completely different experience. Back then, Swiss Chalet wasn't fast casual. It was a sit-down restaurant with real table service, cloth napkins, and an atmosphere that made Tuesday night dinner feel special. The rotisserie chickens turned slowly in the window, visible from the street. The quarter chicken dinner with fresh-cut chips, coleslaw, and that famous chalet sauce in a small gravy boat was the standard order. Birthday parties at Swiss Chalet were events, with Black Forest cake that kids would beg for, even when it wasn't their birthday. Number 4, Harvey's still exists, but the Harvey's of the 60s, 70s, and 80s was a completely different beast. Founded in Richmond Hill in 1959, Harvey's pioneered something revolutionary: customization. Harvey's makes your hamburger a beautiful thing wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise. You'd watch as staff assembled your burger exactly how you wanted it, right in front of you. The burgers were flame-grilled, the buns were toasted, and the whole experience felt premium without being expensive. The original locations had that distinct orange and brown decor, very 70s, with seating areas that encouraged you to stay and eat. And here we are at number 3, the one that's going to hurt. Eaton's dining rooms, the department store restaurants that defined Canadian shopping and dining for 130 years. Walk into an Eaton's in Toronto, Montreal, or Winnipeg in the early 70s, and you'd smell it before you saw it. Rich, buttery pastry, chicken gravy bubbling under crimped golden crust. You'd ride the elevator up after shopping, slide into a booth, and order the special chicken pot pie with mashed potatoes, peas, and coffee served in thick china mugs with the Eaton's logo. This wasn't fast food. It was sit-down, take-your-time dining that cost less than a movie ticket. Mothers brought daughters, office workers took long lunches, tourists rested their feet. The 9th floor restaurant at the Montreal Eaton's was breathtaking, with Art Deco murals, high ceilings, and city views. It wasn't just lunch, it was an occasion. The hot turkey sandwich with gravy, the grilled cheese with tomato soup, the tuna salad on toast. These were meals that tasted like someone's grandmother made them. The waitresses wore uniforms and knew the regulars by name. The atmosphere was hushed and elegant, making you feel sophisticated even if you were just having a sandwich. When Eaton's closed in 1999, ending 130 years of Canadian retail history, we didn't just lose a department store. We lost gathering places, lunch counter conversations, and that simple pleasure of taking a break during shopping to sit down for a proper meal. The Eaton's dining rooms represented a time when shopping was an event, when you'd spend the whole day downtown, and when a restaurant in a department store wasn't just convenient, it was part of the experience. Coming in at number 2, Dominion Store's lunch counters were where grocery shopping became a social event, from the 1920s through the 1980s. Dominion wasn't just a grocery store, it was where your family shopped, and many locations had lunch counters where you could sit on chrome stools and order a grilled cheese, a bowl of soup, or a slice of pie. The counters had glass pie cases at the end, waitresses in paper hats, and that distinctive smell of coffee and toast. This was the original mall fuel, a warm stop during winter shopping trips, where you'd rest your feet and refuel before finishing your errands. And here we are, at number 1. Woolworth's lunch counter, the beating heart of Canadian high streets from the early 1900s until 1994. You'd sit on chrome stools that spun, the counter had glass pie cases, and waitresses wore paper hats and moved fast. The grilled cheese was golden and buttery, the tomato soup was creamy, and the combination was perfection. The lunch counter also served hot dogs, hamburgers, and those famous Woolworth's sundaes that came in tall glasses with long spoons. But it was more than just food. The Woolworth's lunch counter was where you'd meet your mom after school, where office workers took their breaks, where elderly couples would sit side by side reading the newspaper over coffee. It was democratic dining where everyone was welcome, where a kid with 50 cents could sit at the same counter as a businessman in a suit. The lunch counter represented a time when shopping downtown meant taking your time, when you'd spend the whole afternoon browsing Woolworths, picking through the penny candy, looking at records, and eventually sitting down for a grilled cheese and soup. When Woolworths closed in 1994, those chrome stools and grilled cheese sandwiches disappeared, and with them went a piece of Canadian life that can never be recreated. There you have it, 12 legendary Canadian restaurants we'd give anything to visit one last time. These weren't just places to eat, they were landmarks, gathering spots, and part of the rhythm of Canadian life in the 60s and 70s. The restaurants we've lost weren't replaced by better options, they were replaced by chains that prioritize consistency over character, efficiency over experience. What we had back then was special, and understanding what we've lost helps us appreciate what made those times so memorable. Which restaurant hits your nostalgia button hardest? Which one would you give anything to visit one last time? Drop your memories in the comments below. Tell us about the meals you remember, the waitresses who knew your order, the booths where your family always sat. And if this trip through Canadian restaurant history triggered some nostalgia, hit that like button and subscribe, because we've got more stories about the Canada we remember, the one that's slowly disappearing but lives on in our memories. Thanks for watching, and remember, the best meals aren't just about the food, they're about the memories we made whilst eating them.